afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to be back home. Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to help you finish out what I hope has been a fantastic and successful forum. In the spirit of embracing human connection, I wanted to share a little bit about my journey and maybe a different perspective on life and a different viewpoint. And then also sort of some reflections about the sorts of things that I've thought about kind of following my recent flight in hopes that maybe it'll inspire discussion or just a different way of thinking or some interesting chat with your colleagues. So we've got some ground to cover, so we'll get going. So last summer in June, I had the opportunity to fly a suborbital space flight, as Christine mentioned. And any good space flight starts from like an alien-looking layer, right? So this is the gateway to space in southern New Mexico, where we launch our space missions from, and where I flew from. So in the morning we show up and there aren't any lights on outside given by nature just yet, so we brief when it's still dark out. And when we walk in to the building, this is our space flight system. And so it's a mothership with a winged rocket ship underneath. And you know, it's really interesting when you work in a field like this, and many of you, you know, in your own fields, when you work on something that is just so startling or stunning, what you'll see is people who've worked there for a decade will like have their coffee in their hand and they're just sort of standing mouth agape. And I think that that's a good litmus test of like, am I doing things, like am I working on something worthwhile? And the answer is yes, right? And that's maybe one of the things that might make you think that. So the vehicles are in the hangar, and while we're briefing, they get towed out of the hangar to the end of the runway of runway 34 at the gateway to space. And we brief inside and we prep, right? So our teams, like many of your teams, we prepare. We spend a lot of time doing that, a lot of time practicing, a lot of time getting to know one another and communicating. And so those things are really important. And on game day, just for showtime, that's what we're doing. We're going through our routine and we're sticking to our routine, and we really try not to deviate from it. And so this is what the gateway to space looks like once the lights come on and it's getting closer to game time, like I mentioned. And it's really quite impressive. And we also have fun, right? So as we're manning up or getting ready in the spaceship, this is my friend and mentor and colleague and the commander of the mission, Nicola Pachile. He's a test pilot as well. And so we take some time as well to make sure that we remind ourselves we pinch ourselves because we're super fortunate to be sitting in the seat. What we're about to go do is pretty lofty, I think it's fair to say, but we're also having fun. And so that's important. So again, you guys do all this stuff, right? Like you in your own careers, you do fantastic things in service for others with impressive colleagues. And many of you have trained your whole lives to do this, or maybe you're just starting out, but it's nice once in a while just to remind yourself maybe how fortunate you are or how sometimes we take the mundane for granted. Okay, so after we get through selfie time, it's time to go to work. And so this is us getting ready to go to work. And you can see the mothership taking off, and this little, in the corner, in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see Sir Richard Branson. He's standing there with his white hair, cheering us on, which is great. So this is us taking off under the mothership. Oh, and so it's also important, I like sometimes when I speak, it's important for all of us to acknowledge like the people in our lives who make this happen, right? And whether it's your family, your friends, your dog, or your cat, or whatever, these are two of my equivalent. And so these are our two sons, and they were out hanging out with us. And yeah, there they are. And they're having fun. And they're having so much fun. You know, it's so interesting, right? Well, and it's good to think about, again, these people that enable us to do the things that we do. And so while we're climbing up to 45,000 feet to get ready to release, these guys are playing chess with Sir Richard Branson. And it's kind of funny. It's like, it's just like, maybe, I don't know, that dichotomy of experience. And so this is my youngest son, Oliver, and his cousin, Axel. And they're trying to, I don't know, I hope they're trying to make some money off of this trade. But I don't think they succeeded. Although I do think they won. People always ask me, actually, somebody like, who won? And I was like, I actually don't know. But anyway, Sir Richard Branson's a lovely person. He really is gentle and kind. Okay, so back to business. So myself and Nicola, we're climbing up, and this was my seat in the right seat of the spaceship, and this is looking out the right side. I took this photo at the mothership as we climb up to 9 miles above the Earth, and this is like our first stage. So this is our reusable first stage, and we climb up probably about 1.5 times the altitude that you fly in airliners. And you can't quite see it from this photo, but you just start seeing the curvature of the Earth at that altitude ever so slightly. It's like very slight. And it's interesting because, and we'll speak about it a little bit. I think it's fair to say that I never imagined in my life that I would be in this seat, running into a release point, having spent months practicing in a simulator, working with great people to do something inspiring. And it really is like, it's like a pinch me, like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. But it's also like, I got a pretty important job to do in this context, right? Like I think it's fair to say, I really need to show up and do my thing. And so running into that release point, I was thinking to myself, you might be thinking like, oh, I wonder what he's thinking. So I'll answer that for you. And it really was a little bit of, I was focused, but there was a tinge of like, please don't let me screw this up. Like, please don't let me press a wrong button or do something like that. And so, there's, again, that embracing the human side, I think it's fine. I think it's, that's what I'm thinking. And so if you ever happen to think something like that, I'm guessing all of you have thought that at some point in your life, it's kind of what it feels like to get ready to fly a spaceship. And then it's really showtime. And so when we released from the mothership at 45,000 feet, Nicole asked me to light the rocket motor. I pull the rocket motor switch. He says fire. I say fire to communicate that I've heard him. And then we're off like a shot. And it's impressive. This rocket motor lights, and this photo is taken downwards from the mothership. It has a camera at the release pylon. And within 8 seconds, we're supersonic. Yeah. And it doesn't stop. And so it's impressive, and I've had the good fortune to fly high performance fighter aircraft for my entire adult life up to this point. And I've felt acceleration. So I've felt, like plugging an F-18 into full afterburner or a Block 50 F-16. These are very impressive machines built by humans. And it's quite something. It's really impressive. This is like that on steroids. And so it's 3 Gs in your chest. And it's comfortable, but relentless. It's like somebody puts their foot on your chest or your whole body and just in a half second pushes you back in your seat. And I remember sinking into my seat and then settling another half an inch or quarter inch into my parachute. And another thing that I remember is I've worn an oxygen mask for much of my professional life. So I wear this mask. And I remember feeling the little edges of the mask dig into my face, and then I could feel my jowls, and I try and keep in fighting weight, right? I could feel my jowls peel back on my face. And so Nicole and I, we pitch the vehicle up into the vertical after we get through supersonic, and it's still going. I remember looking down at the burn timer. It's a timer that counts down how much longer the rocket motor is going to burn. And there were 40 or 42 seconds left. And the acceleration was relentless. And I thought to myself, I'm like, oh my God, it's that kind of party. It's really just does not stop. And you realize, and I'm an engineer, but you don't have to be one. You realize how much energy is added to a system to get it to go that high. And so we accelerate to just shy. We pitch up in the vertical, and here's a shot taken from a telephoto lens on the ground. It's really impressive, actually, incidentally, on the ground. You can see this with your naked eye. You can see the rocket motor with your naked eye all the way up to 150,000 feet when the rocket motor burns out. And we are we went Mach 2.96. I was telling my kids, I was telling somebody earlier, I said, sometimes, and so many of you have children, and we're always trying to figure out, like, gosh, what'll make me cool in my kids' eyes? Like, I digress, but like, why don't they listen to me? How can I have like social credibility with my children? What does that look and feel like? And so sometimes I'll throw some quip out that I never say as I'm anywhere else in life. But it's kind of like my safe space. I can say anything to my kids within reason, although I do have to suffer the long-term consequences. And I say, like, how many people do you know went Mach 3? And my son, Asher, he says, Mach 2.96, Papa. And so I'm like, dude, it rounds up to Mach 3. He's like, fine. So we accelerate to Mach 3 when the rocket motor burns out about 150,000 feet. And then we coast another 140-something thousand feet. No motor, 3 times the speed of sound, going straight up, and we're coasting the rest of the way. We allow the rest of our crew to unstrap at that point because everybody is decelerating at the acceleration due to gravity. So they're floating. We're still going uphill supersonic. You leave the atmosphere behind, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And it's really quite impressive. The sky, and I'll talk about it later as well. Look at like how dark the sky becomes. The curvature of the Earth becomes, it's not just, you don't just notice curvature of the Earth, you see a good portion of the Earth in all of its splendor. Another interesting piece is, on the way up, we're exoatmosphere. So above 150,000 feet, there's not a lot of air. And so even, the term faster than the speed of sound kind of loses meaning because there is no sound really. It doesn't matter what the spaceship looks like any longer. You could fly a fridge at 2 times the speed of sound at 180,000 feet going up at 180,000 feet a minute, and it doesn't matter. So we fold the vehicle in half to get ready for reentry, and this is what you see here. This is the feather mechanism that folds the tail booms up. And we're monitoring all these systems. And so, it's interesting. This is the view out the front. This is what it looks like. It's stunning. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but then we re-enter the atmosphere. And they says, and then we re-enter the atmosphere as you would. We feather the aircraft, we re-enter the atmosphere, and we defeather the aircraft, or the spacecraft, I guess, so it looks like an aircraft again. We orbit over Gateway to Space, and we land it like a glider. It's a glider. It's got no motor anymore. We used all of that. And we descend. We land on runway 34, and it's high fives all around. And so this was the view that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And it's really hard to do justice to what you see out the window. And again, it's like I'm so grateful to have experienced this in my life. It's not something that anybody, I think, reasonably, in the generation that I grew up in, that anybody reasonably expects to experience. But I think we're changing that, right? I hope we're changing that. Out the window, what you see here is the sky goes from this blue, beautiful blue, like it is today in Vancouver. It's a nice day. To a very slightly darker shade of blue at like 50, 60,000 feet, to like, okay, it's turning like black, like kind of night. And then when you're up top, we're at 287,011 feet, it is like the deepest, darkest dark you could ever imagine. On the right-hand side of this screen is the entire known and unknown universe. It is like this void of everything that we can't comprehend. I don't think I can't. It breaks my mind to think about it. And in the same field of view, there's this transition back to everything that we know, right? Everything that is humanity as it is today is represented on the left-hand side of this photo, and it's beautiful. And you take the colors, and it's as though when you're on your way up at Mach 3, it's as though somebody takes all the color out of the sky and they squeeze it, and at the same time they infuse it across this spectrum, and they turn the colors up to 11 on the ground. It's like living in Technicolor. It really is stunning, and that's another thing. In addition to the acceleration, I don't think I was prepared for, even though we talk about it. I don't think I was prepared for how vivid and how touching that is. And another thing I think of when I look at this photo is, if you look at this band here, see that? That's the atmosphere. It's like, out the window, it looks like an inch. That atmosphere is responsible for the lunch you had. See, table 69's got some fruit or something, I think, on the table. That fruit wouldn't exist without that little band of nitrogen and oxygen and carbon dioxide. Every pet you've ever had, every thing pretty much you've ever had on your plate, every person you've ever spoken to or loved, exists because of that. And in that moment, when you have a realization, and also, by the way, so we're having these like thoughts of a philosophical, I don't know, whatever I am, right? Spaceplane pilot. I'm also doing stuff. So it's not like I didn't like think of all these all in that moment, right? In those many minutes. So I'm like, I got something to do. And then I have, Nicola was great. He's like, look outside. I'm like, okay, fine, looking outside. And then I've got something to do. And so I'm on a timeline in my mind, as we often are, right? We are all on timelines. We're all busy people with important things to do for ourselves and others. And so, as I reflected on this, and I do often, it left me in that moment feeling an overwhelming sense of humility, an overwhelming sense of how awesome it is to be in that seat and to have done, and granted, you're only halfway through this, right? So it's like mid-halfway. But yeah, how really small we are, and how like the bigger picture is really much more important, I think, and I'll speak for myself, than any one of us individually. And that was kind of, I think, startling is a good way, in a really positive way. And I feel really, sometimes I feel bad when I speak about this, only because it's so hard to do this image justice. It's so, like, all the words, they just seem so trite. So forgive me, I'll do my best. But yeah, it's quite something. And then the last thing on this photo I'll leave you with is, well, two things. As you transition from that really deep black and you're going back down into the atmosphere and you're descending at just about as fast as you went up, you come back down. It's like throwing a baseball or a hockey puck, I guess it's better here, into the sky, come back down. You're going down 170,000 feet a minute, and it is like jumping feet first into a pool that is the atmosphere. And it's hard to tell when it happens, but at some point, you're just enveloped by these colors that are just a little bit more subdued than what you were a little bit more than a lot more subdued than what you were experiencing. And it was interesting when I thought about that after the fact. So, and this is something, so I've never done this before. This is very dangerous. This is the most dangerous maneuver that I'm doing today as a test pilot. I'm putting up a text string of my wife, between me and my wife. And so I'd printed this photo. I'd asked her to print this photo for me for a mentor of mine, and I'm in the blue, she's in the black. And I said, looks good, doesn't it? She says, yes. And I said, okay, great. And then she's saying, we all have these text strings. She says, the other one didn't work well, so I'm printing at CVS. And I said, okay. The black came out like stained, and he printed it again, and it was bad. I didn't pay for it, which is very important because we're fiscally responsible. And we try and teach our kids that as well. And I said, good, okay, we'll see. That's funny. It's the blackest black you could ever imagine. Looks like the printer felt it. She said, true. So it's funny because those photos that I just showed you, sometimes the printer at any of these stores, it just doesn't quite do it. It's like over black or not enough black or it doesn't work. So I just thought I'd show you that. So yeah, be very careful when you're sharing your text in a presentation. Okay, so now that we talked about that darkest dark, as Chris Hadfield puts it in his, a very good mentor and friend of mine, puts it in his children's book. This is a photo, I spent a lot of time. So I reflected right after this flight. It was amazing, such an impressive experience. I reflected a lot on like, oh, how did I get there? Like, how did this happen? And why did this happen? How did it happen? Did I ever think this would happen? The answer is no. Did I ever want this? You bet I did. And so I spent a lot of time looking up at images like this, right? This is like the night sky actually taken from the southern United States just for my flight. And I thought sometimes it's really important to share with people, other humans of diverse backgrounds, what does it feel like to look back on your life and think about the pieces that I think maybe helped me get there. So this is a picture of two unlikely actors at an air show when I was a kid. My brother's the one with the helmet on. He's the ugly one, so we put the helmet on him with the visor down. And so, but like an awkward kid, right, who wanted to be a fighter pilot and who thought maybe one day, like try and go to space. I don't know what that looks like. At the time, there was no path. I mean, I think at the time this photo was taken, the Canadian Space Agency probably just existed, maybe. Maybe it had just chosen some astronauts who seemed like they were a world away from me, and like, is that really something attainable? Sure, it's possible. Another thing I think that's really important I like to bring up is, my parents came to this country. I'm the son of immigrants. And I often think how lucky they were to encounter such a just and accepting society. And when we offer that to people who are looking for better beginnings, this is the product we get. So, something I think about a lot. So, here we are. We're at these air shows, and yeah, just kind of daydreaming, right? Looking up, thinking like, okay, how am I gonna make this happen? So, this is like one of the parts of my life where I think I started getting comfortable with like just kind of putting myself out there, right? Being in different scenarios, maybe that people don't typically think of. And we joined the Air Cadets, my brother and I. And there's a photo of us. And, I think that concept, like this is the first time I think in my life where I thought of like really like kind of like putting yourself out there. Like nobody had served in my family. It wasn't sort of super typical. But you know what? Embracing those things that are different and embracing a little bit of uncertainty and embracing maybe doing difficult things, and people say like, oh, it's probably really difficult to learn how to fly. It's like, yeah, sure. And I was 16 years old when this photo was taken. This is the first time I flew an airplane alone. 16. You can see the creases on the photo. And yeah, I think this, this glider in Old Didsbury around there in Alberta, it kind of speaks to me that this is what happens when you embrace those things that are a little bit different or maybe out of your comfort zone. And so I kind of took that a step further. I wanted to go to university, and that was a personal choice, and I enjoyed learning about the physical world, and so I was like, I'm going to study engineering. I still want to be a fighter pilot, and I want to try and get to space. And so I went to the Royal Military College of Canada, and this is me within, first couple months there. And I think another thing that we don't talk about, when we watch movies, we watch Top Gun, it's fantastic. We don't talk about like all the pain that goes with it. When we talk about our lives, right, we're not encouraged to talk about the difficult things that we do. We all do on a daily basis. The grinding in the corners, right? To be able to help other people, to get to where we think we need to be. And again, meandering and finding our path along the way. But these are the things that they don't show you in Top Gun, right? So this is me at military college. And if you knew me better, this is not my happy place. So this is not my jam. To do it, but wouldn't be necessarily what I would choose to do, but I can. But you know what, very importantly, when I was at the Royal Military College, I learned a lot about limits, personal limits, physical, mental, emotional. They're nowhere near where we as humans think we are, and I think a lot of you in this room experience that. So it's important to share that. So yeah, this is me on the pain train. And I talk about doing hard things and trying to do them with a good attitude and with a smile on your face. Sometimes you just can't smile, but you're still doing hard things. And you know what they show you in the movies, they want you to see this, right? In the glossy brochure, like this is the photo they show your parents when you're enrolling, and they say, "Ma'am, we're gonna take your son and we're gonna turn him from a mister and turn him into a sir." And they did. It wasn't pretty sometimes. And there was a lot of self-doubt, I'll be honest with you. And so, while I was in military college, I used to walk around the campus, and I spent a lot of time looking up. And this was one of the artifacts on the campus. It's a Korean War era F-86 Sabre from 441 Squadron, Canadian Fighter Squadron. And I used to daydream about how am I going to get me in an airplane like that? And so, again, these unlikely actors, right, walking around campus in this case. And when I graduated, I was faced with a challenge. It was interesting. And now I look back and I think how silly was I to even think more in a second about this, but I had a scholarship from MNSERC. And I could go to graduate school or I'd go fly airplanes with all my friends. And I was 21 and it was tough. It was really tough. And one thing I did, and I learned the value of this when I was at military college and when I was learning how to fly gliders, the value of mentors. And so all of us in this room, we have them and we are them. And there's a transition in life where you become one, but it doesn't mean you don't still need them, mentors. And so I consulted people who All they wanted was the best for me, for the service, for society, and I made the right decision, albeit seemingly tough at the time. First world problem. So I went to grad school at MIT, and it was great. I surrounded myself with people who are better than me, and it was just uplifting, it's enriching. And so you guys do this all in your own lives, right? Sometimes you take those leaps, right? You step out of your comfort zone, you know maybe you're gonna feel like you're not gonna be able to keep up. One of the best things I ever did in my life. And it's a recurring theme, right? It comes back. Get out there, do the hard things, try to do them with a smile on your face, and it's okay to feel this way. And it was great. I was hanging out in the gas turbine lab, doing stuff, learning from people who are way smarter than me. And you know what? After I graduated, I met up with my friends at pilot training. I was 9 months behind them, and it wasn't the end of the world. And then I got to experience that period of my life, and it was everything I ever dreamed of. Learn how to fly professionally. Wasn't easy, but it was so worth it. To be in a position where, I think it was fair to say I was living out a part of my dreams. I was getting to do those things that I always wanted to do, and I learned how to do hard work, and so I was doing the hard work, right? The parts they don't show you about in the movies. And so this is what they don't show you in the movies again, right? They don't show you this. Like in Top Gun, they don't show you them going through this. This is like northern Manitoba, and we're smiling. And look, I'm smiling in this photo. See, big kind of smile. It's not fun. I'm not enjoying this all that much. It's like super cold. It's at night. You're alone. But this is part of the price of admission. If you want to play, you got to pay. And so this was me paying my dues. So is this. This was actually out on the island here, near, I think it was in Comox. I can't remember if it was Comox or Esquimalt. Doing sea survival training. And you know what they don't tell you when you go to this, these are all mandatory trainings, right? This is stuff you gotta do. If you wanna have a seat in one of those things, you do this because it's required. And there are lots of things in our lives, right, that we do that are not different than this for all of you. The part they don't tell you, see the photo on the left, that dry suit, it's not dry, it's got holes in it. It's like a training aid. And so you feel kind of ripped off because then you're in the water. You're like, dude, why'd you give me the one with holes in it? And it's like they all have holes in them. And the water's colder than it looks. But it doesn't kill you. In fact, what it does is it underwrites your, in my case, the ability to earn a seat in one of these. And so I pipelined F-18s. I was an F-18 combat-ready fighter pilot in Bagotville, Quebec. After going through Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, Cold Lake, Alberta, ended up in Bagotville at my first frontline fighter squadron. And it was, for me, it was a sublime existence. It was just amazing. It was everything I wanted and more. And it wasn't, but one thing it wasn't easy. It was never easy. It was doing the hard things, the same stuff you guys do, often in service for others, with other like-minded people who are also grinding in the corners and sometimes having a bad day, and we're lifting one another up around us. And I think the movies actually do show that. So the movies do show that a little bit. But you understand it's much more human, I think, than that. It was fun. Again, they show you photos like this, right? Your name on an airplane, everything's easy. It's not easy, but it's great. And I learned in that period of my life, I think that's where that transition for me from being mentored by a lot of people and understanding that nobody gets there on their own. I learned that, and I naturally, organically just kind of transitioned as a fighter weapons instructor on squadron to mentoring the folks that come after me. And I think that's something that I hope resonates with a lot of people in this room, I suspect, is just, giving yourself some space to do that, understanding I think it's our social responsibility to do that in our organizations and professional responsibility. And whether that's professional or personal on the side or just, I think that's an important part of life. And that's something I like sharing with people. But that transition to becoming a mentor for people was really important for me and enjoyable. And we got to, there's some cool flying photos, because whatever, it's my presentation, so I'm gonna show flying photos. We got to do fantastic things in defense of this continent for us and our neighbors, because we treat them the way we want to be treated. and I think that's important. This is up near Baffin Island, near Frobisher Bay, way north. You do not want to step overboard in an airplane in this part of the world. To PEI, it actually doesn't take long to do a lap of the island in one of these things. It's pretty interesting. And we're not breaking rules. This is all like totally above board. To like these situations where you're like, how exactly did we get here? And you talk on the radio and I'm like, dude, what do we do with this? Like, I don't know. I'm like, I'm gonna take a photo, because why not? I don't know, I don't know what Northwest was thinking, but he probably wasn't happy, or she. And it's embracing doing those hard things, right? Those things that seem really difficult and that we have to help convey to the people that we mentor. And this is just one example, the technical things as well. And we got really good at it. We got really good at being comfortable in like really odd situations. And they just sort of become your everyday. And you guys do this. You guys do this in spades, all of you. So just consider that, right? Like sometimes we take things for granted that we do that are very special. And whether that's like the human interactions with patients or other organizations or creating things that make care better for those around us or more efficient ways to serve society, you guys all do it. Mine happens to involve just putting the thing in the thing. So this is like when we flew to Hawaii, and you're gonna go swimming if you don't put that thing in that thing, and so you better know how to do it by the time you get there. And I thought just to show you how easy or difficult it is, I have a video because it's fun. So we'll watch one really briefly here. So see, it's easy, right? You just put the thing in the thing. Don't think too hard about it. Otherwise, you're gonna go swimming with sharks. Don't worry about it. Again, you guys do the equivalent in your own professional lives. There are things that you do on a daily basis that if I showed up, I'd be scared to death of. That's why I'm thankful I have you guys. And in that period, thinking back to that young kid who, again, unlikely actor, right? Wasn't sure, there was no path to do this. Like, how do you go to space? In the summer of '09, like when this photo was taken, two of us in this photo, we were finalists to be astronauts in this country, the Canadian Space Agency. Like 5,000 something people apply. And we're down to 4 of us for 2 spots. And it was like, again, I've cut out a lot of parts of the story, but we're on a timeline. And it's really interesting to be in that position in life, to think like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like this is about to happen. And you get a colonoscopy when you're 30 years old and you're like, that better get me something, right? Other than a t-shirt. And spoiler alert, it did. But in that process of getting so close to your dreams, for me, there is some goodness in reflecting on that. And it's really important. This happened to me. I flew a winged rocket ship 9 months ago. In the summer of 2009, I was like, how did that happen? How did I end up here? And not in a good way. And just, I think I hope that that's useful to share with you guys. It was tough after I thought that was it. Like there's no way someone like me can to go to space after that. But I did. I was really grateful to have these mentors around, and I spoke about the value of mentorship, who encouraged me to just keep doing what you're doing. That's fine. This is life. Keep doing what you enjoy and what you're passionate about, what you love, and what brings you happiness, and what makes you feel like you have community around you professionally and personally, and that's what I did. And so I continued on flying, and I did an exchange with the Royal Air Force. This is a Tornado GR4, me flying in Wales with a friend of mine, and the airplane looks way cooler than it flies. It really doesn't fly that well, but that's okay. It does the trick. And we deployed on combat operations. was me and my squadron in Kandahar. And it's like, I talked about glossy brochures earlier, right? It's these it was technically an all expense paid vacation or all expense paid trip to a sunny destination. You know what? Speaking of doing hard things, right, and doing them with good attitudes, a lot of these things are not easy, and you do them as well. A lot of things you do in your lives are not easy, your professional lives and personal lives. It takes a degree of resilience, and it takes good people around you, and it takes being a good person to the people next to you and understanding that in this environment, people have bad days. Totally. People miss home. People have difficult technical days, and it's really important to have some grace with your team. And I learned that from my combat deployments and working with my friends and teammates. And that path then led me to the next chapter of my life, where I went to school at the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School. One thing when I talked about going to grad school, one thing my parents instilled in me was that idea of never passing up an opportunity to better yourself or educate yourself. And it's important that that doesn't always take higher education. So it's not, again, for me, it's not prescriptive. At one point in my life, that was the case, but I also never passed up that opportunity for self-improvement in technical tasks like this particular one was at Test Pilot School. I think that's something I share with my kids. And I think it's important. I think it's far-reaching. I think it applies to many aspects of life. And going to Test Pilot School was fantastic. And we ended up staying there. I ended up staying as an exchange officer to the United States Air Force from Canada to work with our allies for all of our benefit at Edwards Air Force Base. And it was fantastic. Something that's funny. So I showed up at Edwards, and I'd finished Test Pilot School. It was great. And they said, hey, we need you to stay down there. I was like, okay. And our first son was born. My wife had our first son, Asher. And it was a great time for our family. It was just a good time to, I was going to say slow down, but I didn't. But, I was around, which was great. And so I had to go to centrifuge. And so in order to fly the F-16, because I was going to become an F-16 pilot, I had to go to the fuge. And I showed up in my paper. I was like, oh, no, ma'am. I did a centrifuge. I was a fighter pilot in Canada, and at DRDC Toronto, I did a centrifuge. And I said, look, it says right here, 7.5 Gs. And she said, oh no, I'm sorry. We need to impose a 20 to 25% increment on your Canadian qualification if you want to come down here to the States. And I was like, this seems a little unfair and nonsensical. But I'm just a fighter pilot. So here, we have video time again, right? So if you look in the top corner, let me see if I can find this. Up there, that's the current G. So we're sitting at 1.6 G, it's great. And so this is what, just again, because it's fun. You guys, it's fun to see somebody else doing those hard things and not doing them with a smile on their face. You get to listen to me go through a 9G profile, just to kind of see, again, you got to pay to play. And there are lots of, I'm 30-something, I'm in my mid-30s. We've got one young child at home, so you're not sleeping much. You guys are there, you live it. And this is like a Tuesday for me of not fun. So let's listen.
All right, legs tight, breath, pull back on the sit. Keep it in. You're on top, breathe. Push out the abs, drop your shoulders, breathe. Squeeze the glutes, breathe. Squeeze the knees together, breathe. Phonetic K, breathe. Get that air back in you, breathe. Squeeze the glutes, terminate. Breathe on the way down, hold your strain, and go to relax. All right, so any light loss on that one?
No.
No? All right, looked pretty good. A little bit of upper body tension. So just on the SACM, try to remember to keep that upper body nice and relaxed.
Okay, so a few things. This is fun, right? So we're just having fun now because we don't want to overload you with Jameel's philosophical thoughts. At the end, the physiologist, and she's great, right? She's trying to help me. That's her job. Would you say a little bit of upper body tension? It's you think? There are 9 of me sitting on me. Don't you think it's reasonable to have upper body tension? Okay, the other thing is, that's one thing. The other thing is, there are these lights in your peripheral. So from back here, there are these lights. And she asks, any light loss? And you guys laugh because some of you barely know me, and you know I'm lying. You can tell like from my face, you're like, this guy's totally lying. And I like to pride myself as a man of like honesty and integrity, but sometimes I'm not going back in there. I'm not going to tell you I had light loss because you're going to spin me again. Then I'm going to pass out. Then you're going to take my toys away. So I'm just going to tell you there was no light loss. I'm good. So there was that. And then the other thing you saw me, it was almost puke city on the way down because your brain doesn't like this, right? And many of you guys in the room can explain this better than me, but your seat of your pants feels like you're rotating in this cab because as you slow down, you rotate back. Your eyes don't see that because there are no windows. You have a computer screen in front of you and your inner ear feels that. So they're all sending different messages and they tell you like, put your hand on the cab, that will help you. It just helps kind of ground like another frame of reference. Anyway, yeah. So if you ever end up in a situation, no light loss, just smile. But you know what? Doing those hard things gave me the tools I needed to do what I loved. And frankly, to excel, to do great, to help people around me, to lay the groundwork, to do really good work on behalf of this place and that place. And so these were my days at Edwards, right? This was, again, like an awesome season of life. We had a young family at home. Oh yeah, again, it's my presentation, so I put the photos I like in here. And this is one of my favorites of me and the boys in front of a Viper with my name on it. And it was great. Little Oliver doesn't know what to do, so I love it, love it, love it. And it was a great season of life to be able to experience and just try and excel with those around me and embrace being a mentor on squadron. My wife likes this one. She said, like, put the one of you when you flew over Dodger Stadium. I'm like, okay. So we did a fly past for the Houston Astros and the Dodgers when they're in the World Series. And so at my wife's request, here you go. I was in the one with the orange tail. And it was this fantastic period of life. And it was great. Things were great. And I was enjoying it. I was working with like-minded folks. And I remember one day I hit the pitch at Edwards. And so this is us coming back for the overhead break. And I remember looking up and I saw this. And I was like, I wonder what that is. And I thought, oh, the F-22s, the Raptors, they must be doing some really high altitude testing today. And sometimes you see stuff in the contrails. I'm like, oh, maybe they're doing some high altitude classified test. I don't know. And I landed, and I didn't know this because it wasn't a thing, right? Like 15 years ago, there were folks out in Mojave, 20 miles to the west, who were launching spaceships. And so this Virgin had launched a space mission that day. And I was like, huh, funny. Life's not super linear, right? Like these paths we follow are not, nobody's preordained. It's easy to look at somebody in my phase of life and in many of you, and people think, that person, she was always gonna get there. It's like, oh my goodness, you couldn't be further from the truth. And it's important to share that. And so I started doing some digging around and figuring out what's what. And I went through the normal course of my weeks, and somebody sent me a text saying like, hey, if you're off tomorrow morning at 8 a.m., go to Mojave. And so I took Asher, I played hooky, and I don't often do that from work. I told the scheduler, like, oh, I can't fly tomorrow morning, and Sherry, the scheduler, she's like, what are you talking about? You always fly. Like, I can't, I got something. She's like, okay. I went out to Mojave with Asher, who was 4 years old at the time. This was in 2018. And we watched this spaceship called Unity fly to space. And that's how I know you can see it with your naked eye, because I watched it with my 4-year-old at the time. And there's something, I have a good friend named Scott. He said, he sent me this quote after I flew. And he said, you know, dude, it was great yesterday seeing you do this. I'm so proud of you. He said, there's something about watching a rocket launch. It's like hearing a baby laugh. You can't help but smile. And it's super true. I mean, again, whatever your jam is, right? And maybe that's like mountain biking, or maybe it's somebody in a peak, or maybe it's spending time with your family. And for us, it was just fantastic. But I remember, you know what? My son and I, we were literally hanging off a fence watching this. We were on the outside looking in. We could hear the music. They were partying next door, rightfully so. They were opening up the doors for human space exploration for society. Huge. And we were on the fence. We were those unlikely actors, those kids on the fence, thinking, how am I going to get me in that spaceship? And it's okay. I think it's I like sharing that. It's super important for people to know, again, it's not preordained, not by any stretch. Literally looking through a fence, going, this is cool. You know, I was, whatever I was, late 30s, 40, something like that, with my kid. And so, you know what I did? I just kept doing all the things that I knew how to do. I worked hard. I excelled with the people around me. We enjoyed ourselves. These are all photos from out at Edwards, being a test pilot in the F-16 and F-15. Oh, another top tip, always make friends with the photographers. Make friends with the photographers, right? So no light loss, always make friends with the photogs. They'll take cool photos of you so you can give them to your family. And they're lovely people. This is me and my friend Mike Quintini flying an F-15 north of China Lake, Naval Air Station. Beautiful airplane. And you know what? Doing those, having learned to do those really difficult things, embracing like uncertainty, seeking out mentors, being a mentor and understanding that process in life, never passing up opportunities to make myself better, whether that's through formal education or otherwise. And also importantly, never being afraid. And I really do. I think at that end, that last piece in life for me, or that last part of me, sort of evolution, didn't faze me to kind of be on the outside looking in, going like, this is super cool. I didn't even know this was going to be a thing. Nobody did. And like, you know, whether it's like being the person behind the stage, like on the curtain, peering through the side from backstage, being on the outside of the glass looking in, or hanging on a fence, that's how this kid gets to fly this thing to 54.4 miles and become one of, I don't know, 750 people in the world who have ever seen this Earth from that perspective. Nicole and I took this photo with VSS Unity. That spaceship's the exact same spaceship that Asher was looking at through that fence when we were smiling. The one. There is only one. I ended up being lucky enough to fly it. And, you know, it's those pieces that I shared with you and that I wanted to share with you that really, for me, highlight, I think, things that translate to all of our lives, or I hope. You don't have to fly a spaceship or fly fighter jets or something in order to understand that I think those are sort of ties that bind all of us together as humans, personally or professionally or both. And in my case, it gave me the ability to have this experience, to witness something that, you know what, someone like me from this country has actually never experienced. And to be somebody who's able to open up that perspective to diverse voices and diverse lived experiences so we can hear what they have to say when it's their turn, that's really important to me. And I'm very thankful that that arc of innovation in society led us here. And importantly, it didn't happen in a linear way. It didn't happen the way it was supposed to happen. But also, it didn't happen in the way it was supposed to happen, or where I thought it might happen. When I thought I was down and out, I wasn't down and out. I just kept doing the things that got me there in the first place. And so I want to show you a little bit of video before we close out of my flight to space. thank you very much for allowing me to share this afternoon with you guys at Astra to the Stars.